Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I'm here for Nowa Omoigui first annual memorial um, lecture. So we are going to start here. I'm going to share my screen and play the national anthem. Okay. So the theme of this webinar is security in Nigeria. What should we do? And some of the statistics here are actually quite alarming because we've had an exponential increase in deaths over the last few years from kidnapping, banditry, and terrorist activity. So my brother Nowa, he was really an incredible military historian. His forte was security. And so this lecture is in his memory. And apart from being a very brilliant physician. So we're going to start the program, first of all, by opening prayers for Dr. Nowa Omoigui and all victims of insecurity in Nigeria. So please, you can proceed, whoever is doing the opening prayers.
We had Father Cornelius, who was actually at the service. I don't see him online. And we also had an imam, and I don't see him online. So what I just ask is if we can have a volunteer from the Christian faith, and maybe I can invite Shagun Mojimini, and also a volunteer from the Muslim faith, if I please, Aliyu Astiz, to please take us in opening prayer. Thank you.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we thank you, Lord, for the life of our brother, Nowa Omoigui. We thank you for all he was able to achieve in his lifetime. We thank you for the strength that you have given all of us in the past year to bear the loss of his transition. And we give glory to you, O God, today as we celebrate in memoriam the achievements and everything he was able to achieve. And as we go through this webinar, we ask that you take our ears so that we can listen, you take our voice so that we can speak the truth about what is going on. And we ask you to take our mind so that we can learn all the lessons that this webinar is supposed to achieve. And we hope and pray that by the time we finish, we have more reasons to glorify your name for the life of Nowa Omoigui. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Aliyu Aziz, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
O Allah, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment, Thee alone we worship, and from Thee alone we seek for guidance. We thank you for today. We thank you for the life of Noah, being a physician and historian, and also working in the security sector. And also we thank you for the life of the disease. We ask you to place your hands in our hands and also propel us with a sense of vision to really implement all the works that he has done. We thank you, God. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for those prayers. And I'm going to call on Dr. Godfrey Achiluhu, fellow of the American College of Cardiology, to give a tribute to Nowa.
Today marks 1 year anniversary of Nowa's departure. While he lived, he set standards and yet remained humble. We know Nowa as a very precocious child who lived ahead of his peers and time. When I recently read what Father Cooker, the verdict he had given on the state of insecurity in Nigeria, in my private moments, I shed tears because I remember Nowa. And I know that if Nowa had lived in these times, I'm sure he would have aligned with Father Cooker on some of the things he said. Some of us are worried, and the topic of this webinar wouldn't have been better chosen than what we are going to be discussing today. We remember Nowa dearly. He was a close ally. He was a colleague. We shared so many moments along our career path that took us from Ibadan to the United States. We join many friends all around the world to remember him. We will always remember him as long as we live ourselves. It is in that recognition that I welcome everybody. I hope that we will have a fruitful discussion along this horizon. Thank you very much and welcome to all.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Godfrey Achilihu. And so we're going to introduce the speakers. Again, what I want to do is to give the statistics that from the National Security Tracker about insecurity in Nigeria, which was recently published. In the first 3 months of 2022, 2,968 people have been killed in the first 3 months of this year, while 1,484 people have been abducted. And this is by about 1,000 more people than in the fourth quarter of 2021. More people were killed in the Northwest than in any other region in the country, with at least 1,100 people being killed in the first quarter of this year. The North Central region recorded the second highest number of murders during this period, with 984 people killed. In the Southeast, 181 people were killed in the first quarter of this year, while in the Southwest and South-South, 127 and 85 people were killed. So the blood of our people is being spilled on a daily basis. And the insecurity situation in this country has become untenable, completely untenable. So this is a way of a think tank for us to essentially share ideas on how to address this situation, because this nation cannot exist if the security situation continues to deteriorate in such a manner. So as we all know, on March 28th, the Abuja Kaduna train was bombed. People were killed. And our prayers are with the families of all those that were killed in that train, including some very young people like Dr. Chinelo, who had just finished they graduated from dental school, was on her way out of the country to the UK, and her life was cut short. All the promises, all the hopes of her family died that day on that train. And then, I mean, and this insecurity is a bitter pill that all of us are going to swallow. If not now, it's going to be later. All of us here are going to swallow this bitter pill. It's going to affect our friends, it's going to affect our families, or it's going to affect ourselves. So when we cry for these victims of the train and all other victims of insecurity, we are really crying for ourselves. You know, there's a saying, don't seek to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee, you know? So we've been personally affected ourselves, with my mother being killed by armed robbers as well. So it is a situation that has to be brought to a stop. We have to reverse this. And we must also understand that, and hopefully our different speakers will address this, is that we are not going to shoot ourselves. We don't have enough bullets for kidnappers if we do not provide social justice and economic empowerment to our people. We don't have enough bullets. All great societies understand that you must address poverty before you can have security. When China lifts 800 million people out of poverty, they do that because they understand that social harmony requires you to lift people out of poverty, because no human being is going to eat sand. None. They are going to do whatever is necessary for themselves. You see, even in the United States, a capitalist society, there's still a safety net. The poor people have food stamps, they have medical care, they have Section 8 housing, you know, because they understand that social harmony and social stability depend on you taking care of your people. And in Nigeria, we have a situation where for the last 50 years, we had Almanjuris in the north that never had any opportunity for education, never had opportunity for any infrastructure, no opportunity for healthcare, no jobs. And the little children, the little Almanjuris of 50 years ago, they are all grown up now. They are all reproducing, and they are going to do whatever it takes to feed their families. So what I say is this: the revolution of the Almanjuris is here on us. This is not the revolution of Showore. This is the revolution of the Almanjuris, who are going to take whatever they can to do whatever is necessary against a Nigerian state that never took care of them. And all of these people, they look at the leadership of this country, they look at the political leadership, they look at the heads, and they see the wanton corruption, the looting with impunity condoned at the highest levels of the Buhari administration, at the highest levels, from top to bottom, in all arms of government, both legislative, executive, and the judiciary. They are not fools. They say this. They say President Buhari, who says if Nigeria does not kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. They say that, But you see, President Buhari brought to power by associates who were steeped in corruption, surrounded by ministers who were steeped in corruption, party officials who were steeped in corruption, involved in cases of billions of naira, and yet their party chairman, their party officials, and then recently 2 governors pardoned with the theft of 2.8 billion naira. So the youth look at the impunity at the very top, and they decide, having been deprived of all what they need to function, they decide to do their own by fraud, by kidnapping, by killing, by terrorism. So the mafia says a fish rots from the head. So this is a nation that deserves cleaning from the very top. Because if, according to President Buhari, corruption will kill Nigeria, then anybody aiding and abetting corruption is guilty of a treasonable felony. And that's the way it has to be addressed, because this nation is critically ill. And again, so one of the things that needs to be happened is that the youth are deprived of any ability to earn a living by failure to even implement electricity. Even the hawker on the street, the lady at the lowest level who sells sachet water, when you have a national grid collapse and people have no electricity for 3 weeks, she can't even put her sachet water in a refrigerator. Then I can even charge her phone. So my suggestion is that we need to declare a national emergency on electricity, because without electricity, we will have no security. And if the Buhari administration cannot rise to the occasion, then they need to step down. We don't need to wait till 2023. They need to step down immediately and let people who can take care of control of this country and put in the right direction come and replace them. So those are just my prelude, and I'm going to introduce the next speaker. For security reasons, she's going to be anonymous, and that's one of the passengers on the Abuja-Kaduna train incidents.
She's been trying to log in. She's saying she's having difficulties. I know I've had some people having difficulties logging in. So I've sent her the manual details. Okay. So I suggest we go on to the next speaker. Well, and the next speaker is also not here, neither is the third. So, oops, sorry.
Okay, so who do we have here now?
Sorry, we have the former Inspector General of Police, Solomon Arase, on the call.
Okay, I wish to welcome former IG Solomon Arase to the webinar. Inspector General, please, you have the floor. You can unmute yourself.
Let me thank my dear sister Okaro for the courtesy of inviting me to share my thoughts on this very topical issue. And also the 1-year lecture anniversary in honor of our late brother. She told me just last week when we met at the function, and I gave her my assurances that I will be part of this webinar this evening. The topic for discussion is very, very topical, just as our big brother has mentioned. We currently face an existential threat. The insecurity in the country, is such that a lot of people are now thinking that we are now in a Hobbesian state where right has become might, where there are no consequences for crime. People are not arrested, they are not prosecuted. So it's a very big problem. But before I proceed, since it's a very short presentation, let me just make 2 quick contributions to say that there is no country without one form of security challenge or another. And there is no country that can completely eradicate all threats to her security. But the idea is that, just as I said earlier, in other claims, when crimes are committed, people are arrested, they are processed through the judicial system, and they are kept at bay so that at least it acts as a deterrent to others who are likely to commit such an offense. And that is why a lot of people are beginning to wonder if our tactical and operational competencies in the country is so porous that people commit crimes and just walk away. Second point I wanted to also point out is that the primary responsibility for guaranteeing security in the country is that of the government. If we want to take it back to the social contract theory, the philosophers, they all said that. But now it has also become a part of our constitutional requirements, where they say that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary concern of government. So that is why a lot of people are beginning to get worried why we are not taking steps to halt the degeneration into a state of anarchy that we are presently facing in the country. My sister wanted me to talk about what can Nigerians do to assist the police and the vigilante group in stepping into dealing with these issues. The way the police is presently constituted, their numeric strength is not enough to govern the security space. Security is about dominance of the environment, visibility. With the vast area we have in this country and the number of policemen that we have, they are grossly inadequate for us to be able to carry out this mandate. The finest of the policemen actually that we have, most of them, they are deployed into taking care of the political and economic elites. That is why everybody is always very happy to see a policeman standing behind him when he's making an address. That goes to show that, well, I have now arrived. And that one is not something that should be encouraged. Most of those people who are being deployed to this political class, we can bring them out and let them police the security space, which is currently porous. So let me quickly talk about talking about the vigilante and the Nigerian police force. As I have said, the police, as it is presently constituted, cannot dominate the security space. They don't have the numeric strength. The budgetary allocations are not there. The wherewithal is not there. The technical platforms are not there. In other jurisdictions, when you commit a crime, it takes the police maybe about 2 or 3 or 4 hours to be able to reconstruct, the crime scene through the CCTV. These CCTVs sometimes they are not always installed not only by the government, but also by private securities like supermarkets, housing estates, to complement what the government has been able, in Nigeria anyway. The government, the 2 areas or 3 areas, states where we try to experiment it was an absolute disaster, which is Benin, Abuja and Lagos. I think they also tried in Akwa Ibom or something, but it did not work. So they are in trying to deal with this lacuna that we have in the security space. What most countries have done, I will just take about 2 or 3 examples from the African sub-regions and compare it with what we have tried to do in Nigeria and see whether there are things where the average Nigerians can come in to assist the vigilante groups, the Nigerian police, because the Nigerian police, they cannot, get their acts together. So it means they have to outsource some of the areas where they need to take care of. So that's why I chose about 2 or 3 African countries. I'll just briefly tell you how they stepped in, how effective it has been. The first one is the citizen-driven policing models in other parts of the world. I chose Kenya. In Kenya, faced with the challenge of cattle rustling, 2 villages formed a joint security system. They selected a commandant and an assistant and hired 5 police reservists. Some citizens donated vehicles. So this is the community approach towards dealing with insecurity now. Some citizens donated vehicles, others kits, kitted the vigilante groups, while communities contributed to pay them little stipends. The police reservists worked alongside rangers employed by large-scale ranchers to repel cattle raiding, while the Kenyan police established a connection with the reservists and on daily monitored and regulated their activities. Following these moves, cattle rustling declined remarkably in the affected localities. That is one example. That is just here, one of our neighbors here. In Southern Sudan, a market association here arranged with the police that when any trader is arrested for a compoundable crime, he or she is handed over to the association. The market association resolves the issue and reports their resolution to the police, which means that apart from the vigilante in dealing with this internal security that we are presently faced with, we need other non-state actors, the National Union of Road Transport Workers, the Market Women Association, the MBA, the Nigerian Union of Journalists. All the non-state actors must be involved, because we have suddenly realized that the government cannot take care of these things, the police are incapable of doing it, and these are the lessons we can draw from others. So when you outsource some of the compoundable offenses to all these non-state actors, you are now, the little manpower you have is now reserved for strictly criminal, social disorders for you to take care of. Unlike what we have here, where most of our, our men, they are scattered. In Uganda, again, the last African example I have, it was a work-based organization, the Taxi Drivers Association. They had an agreement with the police that allows the association to police taxi and bus parks in respect of traffic offenses, pickpockets and other disputes between drivers and challenger, while exchanging criminal intelligence with the police. The police, on their part, offer the association's members training in crime control and prevention. So, unlike us, where we keep a lot of men on the highway to start checking documents and all those type of things, these things are outsourced to another association. Now, let us come back to Nigeria. We have some, lessons to learn from Nigeria. But just like everything that we do in this country, the sustainability is not there. Continuity is not there. And that is why we are where we are. In Nigeria, historically, our revered traditional institutions are known to be strong social control actors who have been deploying their grassroots reach and time-tested cultural frameworks for information collection and dissemination, crime detention and dispute resolution at community level. Their strong knowledge of history and culture, norms, cultural practices, as well as their reverence by their subjects are vital assets that could be tapped into to engender community-driven policing and address local and national crime and security challenges. That is a bit notorious because, in our traditional African society where we had no formal policing system, our various societies were properly policed. So the missing link is that we were not able to now, collapse the present security architecture that we had with our traditional system. I also mentioned the issue of the Plateau State. Plateau State, where we've been having a lot of crises. 2 or 3 years ago, no, 6 years ago, I think then I was still an Inspector General of Police. There was a novel, security-driven system that they adopted. He said in the state faced with the incessant threat of insurgency and communal clashes, a community security arrangement in which Christians are engaged to secure their Muslim brothers and sisters during Jumite prayers, and Muslim brothers providing security for Christian brethren on Sunday services were in place. In presenting a united interfaith and inter-ethnic front to confront a common enemy, this innovative security model has remained potent in the management of the security challenges in the Plateau, but it was not sustained. And that is why just last week here, Plateau came under serious attacks. Even let us come to the Northeast, which is the area with the epicenter of terrorism before it started moving to the Northwest. Even more significant is the citizens-driven internal security model in the Northeast geopolitical zone of Nigeria, where youths, with the support of different components of the local community, volunteered to complement the state by forming themselves into vigilante and community defense bodies to defend their communities against terror attacks. The strength of the civilian JTF, as they are popularly called, lies not in the sophistication of their firearms, training or pecuniary benefits, but in their exemplary courage, passion for their communities, and advantage of full understanding of the topography of the community. So in forming this vigilante group that we're talking about, that is one of the most potent way of dealing with insecurity in this country, because the youths, they understand the topography, they understand the language, they have, similar culture. So all these things, putting them together stands them in very good stance, in stemming insecurity. So they draw strength from the knowledge of the local population, such that they can easily identify and isolate strangers and locals linked to terrorism and other crimes. Furthermore, they have ability to generate quality criminal intelligence that is vital to crime management and the war on terrorism. So you see that when you talk about these vigilante groups, all they just need is just assistance. Equip them, they understand, the areas where they're supposed to work. So what lessons can we draw from the policing practices in other territories to strengthen? I think that is why this webinar we're having is very, very important, particularly in relation to integration of the citizens to policing and crime management, functions. We just have to rely on the visual vigilante groups. A state like Ondo, with the setup of Amoteco, they've been able to not totally, halt criminality in Ondo State, but what they call crime dispersers. They have now driven, people who, the herdsmen and all those people who were harassing their various areas into Edo State and other neighboring states that does not have that same structure that they have. So that is where the strength of the vigilante, and because the governor has skating, bought them vehicles, gave them logistics, but the only area where I will want to advise on as we go forward in this discussion is that those various vigilante groups, or whatever they call themselves, who are supposed to complement the function of the law enforcement officer, should not take on the toga of, becoming another police force, like happened in the East, where you have the Bakassi boys, or the Arawa, or the one they had in Niger Delta, who took on to themselves, the powers of the police, and along the line, the rights of the people who they were supposed to protect were also the rights that they were violating, and also engage in extrajudicial executions. So those are the things that we should think about, how we can, the citizens, we can come together and see how we can assist the vigilante groups. We can always do this when, in 8 years ago or 7 years ago, when this issue of cattle rustling came up in Kaduna State, what we call the G7 governors. I'm sure Mr. Okaro, who is the DG in the Governors Forum, must have documented that incident. The 7 governors in that area, they came together. The advantage of them coming together to deal with a common problem was that they were pulling their resources and their manpower together, because in the midst of inadequate resources and manpower, what the best way is for you to organize, a sectorial security, method where you can pull your resources together. So the various states in the South can pull their resources together, assist these vigilante groups. Those ones in the Southwest can do the same thing, while in the Southeast, they can also do the same thing. It is when groups, they work together like this, pull their resources together to aid, the security architecture that is at the grassroots, which is the vigilante group. That is only the time that the law enforcement officers will be able to perform, effectively. I think I will stop here. Maybe during the question and answer sessions, if there are gaps, that I have not covered, I will be able to cover them. I thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, IG Arase. And I would like to also invite other participants in this webinar. Feel free to text your questions in the chat, and I can relay your questions to the IG. And make sure you have your name, please, when you text your questions. Thank you, IG. I just want to, before we move on to the next section, I'd like you to address a couple of things. First of all, you reiterated that we don't have enough police officers to police the space of Nigeria. And you reiterated the role of vigilantes. But a couple of things. I'm sure you are very aware that the vigilante was resisted by the federal government, setting up vigilantes. And in fact, the federal government had to be dragged kicking and screaming into any corporation. And even the corporation is very limited. They resist any arming of the vigilantes. So this is an arrangement that really doesn't have the full cooperation of the federal government. And again, also, when you have policing, the people must have trust in the police. There are so many instances of headsmen and bandits being taken to police stations and are released by the police. And they go back to kill the members of the community who took them to the police. So when you have a police that is not trusted by the community, you're going to have a breakdown of cooperation. And then I'd like you to address how the pervasive corruption of the country has impacted the performance of the police, because there's no aspect of our national life that has not been undermined by the greed and corruption of those in charge, with impunity, where nobody is brought to account. There's no transparency in anything. I'll give you an example, IG. Remember some years ago when the police college came to light in Lagos? The state of the police college, it was worse than a state of an animal pigsty. The conditions in which our policemen are being trained. And I believe Jonathan was the president there and stopped by, and he was more angry that the media had brought it to light than concerned about the welfare of those police officers. I mean, how do you train police officers in that kind of terrible, terrible, dilapidated, unhygienic environment? In fact, I remember somebody telling me they had a prayer that may you or your family not meet the product of that police college on the street. I mean, when somebody can give you that kind of a prayer, you know that we're in trouble. So IG, please address that.
Thank you very much, Uncle. The resistance of the vigilante group by the federal government, I think it was the handling of how it was set up. I remember in 2015, I was the first, as the IG then, to convoke a security summit where the issue of community policing and partnership can be harnessed. And President Buhari was the one who, he was at that summit. And we all agreed that, the police is facing serious, we require re-imaging. The trust between the Nigerian police and that of the citizen has already broken down. And this is because of what you have just mentioned, issues of corruption, human rights, abuses. And that was what informed me to cancel all roadblocks in the country when I was an Inspector General of Police. Because I said those areas where the Nigerian police officer come in contact with members of the public, that could ignite that issue of corruption and distrust. Let us start taking them off. And we dismantled the roadblock. For the 13 months I was an IG, we had no roadblocks in this country. Instead, we replaced them with safer highways, motorized patrol along our major, highways. And I told them, I said, roadblocks is not a good policing strategy. You only see roadblock being mounted when you have an intelligence that something is going to happen, or you have intelligence that something has happened, and you are looking specifically, either a stolen vehicle or a vehicle that has been used for kidnap. That is when, and it's a temporary thing. Once you are able to now detect that something, then you remove the roadblock. We also went ahead to say the welfare of the policeman is directly, tangential to the way that he treats other members of the public. A policeman who goes into the Nigerian police force after 35 years or 60 years, whichever comes first, is leaving the system. He doesn't have anywhere to move into, especially those ones at the junior ranks, the rank and file and the inspectors. The tendency for them to always want to help themselves is always there. So there must be a way, you must emplace policies you will not have the moral attitude to go against them whenever they err. For example, housing. We started building low-cost houses for all of them. We built in about 8 states before I left, 2-bedroom, and I insisted that the sergeant and the inspectors, those houses were costing 5 million. They have what you call cooperative funds. So I say, once you join the police force as a constable in the academy, you start saving 5 naira from your salary every time. That is the one you are going to use to defray the cost of those things. Then scholarship. You see a policeman is killed, during maybe confronting insurgency. The following day, they are moving the wife and the children away from the barracks for other people to take over those barracks. His burial expenses have not been paid. The woman is not skilled enough to be able to cater for herself or the children. So what you are doing is that you are, invariably creating another social monster, because the children not going to school is going to be, just as you rightly mentioned, the Alemajiri system. So we created we went and incorporated in the corporate affairs a scholarship scheme for if once you die as a policeman while you are, serving the country, your children, they go through, we have police schools, police primary schools, police secondary schools, now the police academy in Kano. So you now take those children through those schools so that at least their social status will improve from their father, the inspectors are rank and file. But just as I said, sustainability of these policies, at the strategic level, you must be mentally mobile to be able to come up with policies that will mitigate issues of corruption. All these issues of corruption they're talking about. I started taking the statistics throughout the period I came up with those policies to see how many of those, they did not want to lose those benefits, those social benefits. So everybody keyed into behaving themselves properly. But when you don't sustain something, you go back again. After you have built it up, you go back again. So I think that one will answer that one. So the issue of trust is that we just have to look for a way to cater for the welfare of this. Most of the people who we are having problems with in the Nigerian police force, they are the rank and file and the inspectors. The officer cadre, those who have gone to the university or attended HND and all those stuff, you see that their conduct, they can relate. Their social contact with members of the public is always very, very robust. So that is the area where we have to think about it. The police colleges, you also said it. And you go to the police colleges, you start buying kits for yourself, you start buying, buying handouts and all those things. All those are things that we said, no, they can. If you are not going to train them, if you don't have money to give to the commandant to train the student, then don't recruit them. If the federal government is not prepared to provide resources for these things, don't recruit them. You don't just take them there, you now start encouraging the instructors. Then the issue of we are in a system, sir, where a lot of police officers are allergic to knowledge. They don't want to be trained. If you send them to training institutions, they resist it. Whereas in the military, you discover that the high-flying officers who go to courses, they are the ones who go back to go and teach in the NDA, who go back to Jaji to go and teach, who go back to Defense College to go and teach. They select, they have a selection process where they are able to get out the best from their system. But it's not the same with Nigerian police force. Our recruitment policy is so flawed, even the politicians are the worst culprits. When you are going to do any recruitment in the police force, you will see a long list from the from the various houses of the various houses. This one will say, this is my constituent. And when one of them came with a list one day, I said, why is this your constituent? Why not give us the best? Can't you get me anybody who is your constituent who has a 2-1 or a first class in any of the discipline? I will take the person immediately into the Nigerian police. Why are you asking me to take, this is the one that has refused to go to school in my family. Then you want me to put that one into a system that will have, where you will have to now start dealing with members of the public. So we have a broken system. And that is where most of our problem, they lie. The resistance of the federal government towards this vigilante group was the way it came about. They were thinking that they were going to arm them. That's exactly what I said, that they cannot take on the toga of another law enforcement officers, but they can work hand in hand with the conventional policemen. They can act as intelligence officers, crime analysts, and all those that are waiting to the police force. I think those are the issues, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, IG. Let me see if I can take a couple of comments from the audience, separate from the question and answer format. But I'm going to call on Kede I here because he texted a question. So Kede, after Kede, I'm going to call on Pride Osayame. So Kede, please, the floor is yours to ask Honorable IG RSA. And I want to commend you for your service, IG. And again, you talked about sustainability. You implemented a number of reforms, but the moment you're out, everything just goes back to square one. So let me call on Kede and Pride. You will be called first once we get to the questions and answers. So I'm going to call on the, she's anonymous because she doesn't want her identity to be disclosed, the passenger on the Abuja train bombing and kidnapping. So please, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for your time and this opportunity to speak with everybody. In view of in being anonymous, what my concern was having an open circuit, but I don't mind sharing my identity within this group of people. I just didn't want to have like an extensive public group, but most of the members are also already familiar to me in any case, just for your information, sir. If I may proceed, I was indeed on that train on March 28th from Abuja to Kaduna. I was in the first cabin, that's SPA 15. It was our cabin that hit the explosive device on the tracks first. There was an explosive device laid on the tracks, which I believe ignited or was set off once the train hit it. We hit this explosive device at approximately 7:47 p.m. The train was scheduled to arrive at 8:10. So we were about 20-25 minutes by train outside Kaduna when this happened. So as soon as we hit the tracks, we were first informed on the train that it was a train malfunction. So people started to get comfortable again and didn't take the urgency of the situation. It didn't hit people right away that there was a problem happening. Most people started chatting, getting comfortable and relaxing again. Meanwhile, myself and one or two other passengers were aware that there was definitely something much larger happening. We could see some orange red lights coming in from the cabin behind us, and we weren't sure what was happening, but in hindsight, I believe that must have been from the explosive underneath the train. I'll just go through a series of events briefly. After we hit the explosive, we were informed that it was a train malfunction. People continued with their own business. Then we heard gunshots outside. It was when the first gunshot that people immediately hit the floor of the trains. And then fortunately, I don't know if they were mobile police, but the armed security that was on the train with us, there were about 6 to 8 members of armed security who were on the train with us, started exiting the train. They came rushing through the aisles and started exiting the train through our cabin. Once they exited the train, they started engaging the, don't know how to refer to them, whether they're bandits or terrorists, but the people who engaged the train in any case, people who came to attack us. The Mopos started engaging them with the weapons that they had. What was immediately obvious from the Mopos that were exiting the train was that they were not wearing bulletproof vests. They didn't have boots on. They didn't have helmets on. They appeared to be not properly kitted to handle that situation. However, they still engaged. So I'd like to refer to them as patriots and heroes at this point in time, because my concern is that they definitely most likely have not been remunerated. They haven't been paid enough to do what they're doing, but they still engaged. And they stepped outside the train and started firing back. And all we could hear from inside the train was gunshots being exchanged backwards and forward. And we didn't know what to expect. And then about 20 to 30 minutes later, we could hear people outside the train screaming Allahu Akbar. And they were rapidly approaching the sound of the voices rapidly approaching the train. This is when panic really ensued within the cabin, and people started rushing, not outside the cabin, but to the cabin behind us. And this is when the stampede happened. There was a stampede, people rushing backwards, because we were the first cabin. So people were rushing backwards to the cabins behind us. And in the stampede, the aisles were very narrow, so people were getting crushed and trampled and falling to the ground. And I myself also fell to the bottom of the stampede when we were rushing backwards. Given, I suppose, some basic training or knowledge or just exposure, I was very acutely aware that one cannot stay at the bottom of the stampede. A lot of people at the bottom of the stampede tend to get killed or injured. I pulled myself up. I was able to move across the aisle and into the seats. So I started moving forward, jumping from seat to seat, which is how I was able to move through the cabin. And each seat I encountered was filled with people. There was people in front and under the seat in the front and under the seats in the back. So I wasn't able to stop at a particular seat and get under. I had to keep moving forward. By the time I got to the middle of the cabin, I decided that I should just stop where I am. So I ended up on one of the seats and I laid myself flat so that I would be below the windows, because I was concerned that any stray bullets might come into the windows. I wasn't sure how thick the windows were. I've heard different reports from previous attacks on the train that have been shot passing by and the bullets not penetrating. So I had some sense of comfort that perhaps the bullets were not going to penetrate the windows. At this point, before I made it to the seat, however, we now started seeing silhouettes boarding the train shortly after they had been screaming Allahu Akbar. So these were definitely, like we said, if we're going to refer to them as bandits or terrorists, I'm not sure how to refer to them. And they boarded the train. When they boarded the train, they opened fire indiscriminately. They started shooting people. And since I was in the middle, I was fortunate enough not to be shot. I didn't receive any bullets. I wasn't abducted and I wasn't injured by any of the bullets. However, all the people that were behind me, a lot of them took bullet wounds. Most of the injuries were in the back, lower abdomen. This is because people were rushing forward and they were shooting from behind us. And that's why those injuries came out in abdomen, lower back areas and whatnot. They engaged us for about, not that, I don't want to say not that long. They engaged us for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes before they exited again from our side. Later, we learned that they breached the train from different areas. The front of the train, the back of the train, the middle of the train, they breached at different cabins. And then we were in darkness. We were sitting ducks in the train. There was no network, there was no reception. We were in the middle of the bush. the train tracks itself is at a lower level than ground level. So they definitely had the higher ground and we were at the lower ground. We were literally sitting ducks. Our only hope was that one or two people had managed to get word out, because we had some high profile people riding the train. I'm not sure if it was because people were in the capital because it was primary season, or we normally have dignitaries on that train anyway, moving back and forth in any case. We got stuck in the cabin for an extended amount of time, for a few hours. People were in the racks on the top where the luggages are supposed to be. People had climbed the top. There was just people everywhere. We were like sardines in the cabin. People were arguing back and forth, trying to get people to turn their phones off because they didn't want the lights to attract the bandits from outside the train so they wouldn't see where we were. People were shushing each other. There was a lot of praying going on. We thank God, both Christians and Muslims were praying. We all prayed, we all worship the same God. I can definitely say that God was definitely with us on the train. He didn't leave us, he didn't abandon us. I tried my best to touch people on the shoulder and tell them it was well with them, not to worry, God is with us, to calm people down, trying to convince people not to exit the train, that they should wait for help to arrive. Later, a few people that did exit the train were injured, some people were killed, some people didn't return, because plus we didn't know what was outside, and I knew that the train was the train tracks are about 1 or 2 meters, below ground level. So to even come out of the tracks is difficult. You need to be pulled out. About 4 or 5 hours later, the Mopos, even when we were walking them, we kept moving backwards from one cabin to the next cabin when things calmed down more. We saw some of the Mopos in between the cabins. One of them had his rifle up. You could tell that he was traumatized. He was shaking with his gun. Only God knows what he had seen, what he had encountered. They were discussing about how some people didn't return from the train when they were outside. The Mopos were telling people that the soldiers had arrived. At first, this was a ruse just to try to calm people down. I engaged them directly and they said, no, ma'am, we're still waiting for them to arrive. However, they did arrive in the end. I believe it was First Major that arrived. The first wave of them arrived and they started evacuating some passengers. And some people started making phone calls. I didn't have reception. I was on MTN. My MTN phone didn't have reception. My Airtel line did not have reception. The only lady that had reception next to me was one woman who had a SIM card from Niger Republic. I was able to call my mother and my father on her phone. I bumped into other family members on the train, other people we knew. That's how small the community is. And then they was doing what the injured people were still lying on the ground. There was a lot of bleeding. And then as I had made my way further down more of the cabins, I saw some soldiers who had boarded the train. And I had asked them, how many of you are there? And they said that there were about 50 of them. And I now stuck my head out the train and I could see that they had indeed posted themselves along a security line along the train, which is when I knew that it was safe to start deboarding. They were carrying this lady, her name was Haja Leila, and she had been shot in the back. We had tied a scarf around to stop the bleeding. And she was so one soldier was carrying her on his back, piggyback style. And this lady was very strong, very resilient. She didn't make a peep, she didn't make a sound, she didn't scream, she didn't cry. And the soldier was getting tired carrying her, and they were disputing amongst themselves. He sat down with her, and you could tell that she was in extreme discomfort. And he was discussing about how he had given another person to carry his gun for him, and he was looking for the person who was carrying his gun. And I told him to hand her over to another soldier, and he should go back and look for his weapon, and we'll proceed with the injured. So I followed them, tried to help them. Maneuver and organize themselves to get some passengers out. We deboarded. We walked up about maybe 10, 20 meters down the tracks. They had positioned themselves in post. I was in the first wave of evacuees. I think this was because I was communicating with the soldiers and trying to get people to calm down on the train. People now started wanting to rush back to the first cabins. And that first cabin where we had first hit the explosive device now started, to be dislodged when people were rushing back. I was trying to convince them, don't move back. It's not stable. Stay where you are. They need to spread out their weight and not to dislodge the cabin and stay where they are and wait for help to arrive. And I didn't think it was a good idea for them to exit. It's always best to stay where you are, wait for help to arrive. I don't know if that's the case, but that was my thinking at the time. I thank God for the clarity of mind and comfort and faith I had told myself that I wasn't going to cry until I reached home, that I wasn't going to shed a tear until I had made it successfully back to my son. That was my motivation. This is what helped me stay calm. By the time we reached the checkpoint where they had set themselves, they pulled us up. I thank God I wasn't in a tampa, I was in pants. I had my sneakers on. I didn't have any luggage with me. I just had my handbag because I was on the 6:40 a.m. train that morning. I had gone into town for some documentation and to finalize the job interview because I in town. So it was easy for me to maneuver. People started complaining, our kaya, our suitcases, that told them that life is priority, that they should forget about that. And even though, I myself maybe couldn't sympathize because I didn't have suitcase myself, but I imagined that it wasn't a priority. When we got to the top, it was an incline. We had to climb our way up, help people up who had been injured. There was about 8 vehicles parked, 8 Hiluxes parked, 4 on both sides. They were waiting for further instruction and waiting for further reinforcement to arrive. The woman on the ground, Haja Leila, who we had helped her, she'd been passed through like 3 or 4 soldiers to get her to that position. She now mentioned to me, she was calling me Zainab during the entire exchange. My name is not Zainab, but I was willing to be her Zainab. She said to me in Hausa, said this kind of thing we don't wait for. So she had reactivated me into action. I started approaching the soldiers, said, sir, we need to get the wounded into the town. She's bleeding and she doesn't want to wait. At that point, we loaded 2 vehicles. 2 vehicles were loaded with wounded. There was the first vehicle. I was in the second car. It took us another 15-20 minutes to exit the bush and make it into the main road. The first vehicle in front of us was a new vehicle. So they were moving much faster than we were. We were in an old vehicle. Our headlights were not working. They were very dim. The siren was not working. So we were separated from the first vehicle. By the time we made it onto the main road, we were able to identify them. They waited for us. I was disorientated when we made it to the first. I didn't know which was heads or tails, which way was towards Abuja, which way was towards Kaduna, but the soldiers, they knew. We crossed into oncoming traffic, and then it took us another 40 to 45 minutes to get into town from where they rescued us. We were about 20 minutes out by train, but by road, that ended up being about 40 to 45 minutes. When we were on the train in the vehicles moving into the city, I asked them, where are we going? They weren't sure where to go to. They said, and I said, it's the nearest hospital. So we now ended up at St. Gerard's Hospital. When we arrived at St. Gerard's Hospital, we were the first 2 vehicles to arrive. In the first vehicle, there was a girl, her head was leaning on the window. And in hindsight, I realized that she was in that same position from when I had seen her at the campsite, and she was DOA. She was dead on arrival. She didn't make it. I still have a vision, an image of her face. Her mouth was open and her head was resting against the window, and she had been in that position, since the last time I had seen her. the soldiers told me not to focus on that and to help get the rest of the passengers into the victims into the hospital. They brought out a gurney. We put Hajalila on it. There was another man who was shot in the foot. We had like two injuries, one on the foot, one on the leg. This is because of the stampede and them shooting at us during the stampede. People were falling and moving forward. That's why all the injuries ended up in those areas. By the time we got into St. Gerard's, there was nurses on duty, but there were no doctors on duty. Finally, they brought a surgeon out, and we had taken Hajalila to the back room, and the bullet was still lodged in her, and she had like a bruise on her chest. It appears maybe a bullet had ricocheted off her chest. She had pooling of blood behind it as well. So I was now wondering the kind of weapons that they had and the kind of bullets they were using, if it didn't actually penetrate her, which goes to show that maybe the weapons they had were not necessarily as sophisticated as people are saying they were. I mean, I know I've been, this wasn't my first incident being by armed robbers. There's another time when we were attacked by armed robbers, and the guns they had they were holding it together at the trigger area. So I know that, and these are all hazard in themselves, these shoddy ammunition that they're using. And then the doctor there, back to the hospital, advised me to further communicate to the soldiers to move us someplace else, because they didn't have equipment and they didn't have doctors to attend to the people at the hospital. So I now looked for their OC. There was a Lieutenant Marafa, who I've still been in communications with after the incident. All the soldiers that came to rescue us have, some of them have been reaching out, wondering if we are okay and how passengers, how victims are faring. They have even been kind enough to escort me from Kaduna to Abuja after the incident, because I wasn't comfortable taking the road again by myself, but I had to come into Abuja for work. So I would like to highlight them as heroes and patriots. They have definitely been there for us before, during, and after the incident. They need to be commended. The same for the security people, the mopos who are actually on the train. So after I spoke to him, I told him that we need to move everybody from here and let's go to Hospital 44. I know Hospital 44 is a military hospital. They said, fine. So we started loading people back into the vehicles. And then one of the nurses didn't want us to leave. She said that we couldn't exit because we hadn't paid for the services that they had rendered. I approached her, trying to, not to transfer my anger on her, and told her that whatever it is, would be attended to later. I was also informed by one of the other passengers that one of the victims with us was formerly Deputy Governor from Zamfara State. Later, I found out that he was actually in the vehicle with me. I didn't know who he was until after we got to Hospital 44. With Haja Leila, there was a young girl, also about 18, 19 years old. She also had a bullet wound in her abdomen. These people had, stayed with their injuries for hours upon hours. I don't know, it's only God that saved them, they didn't die from internal bleeding. By the time we got to Hospital 44, their vitals were taken. Haja Leila, who was still referring to me as Zainab, I was only communicating Hausa at the time. I'm grateful that I can speak my native dialect. I was able to communicate with her. Her modesty was still very important to her, even through all these things. So she wanted I could sense that she needed just to be shielded and covered so that we could remove her clothing. I assisted to move her into the X-ray room. Some of the nurses there still wanted me to participate in moving her from the gurney to the X-ray room, and they didn't want to stay, in the X-ray machine with her, but I didn't mind. We arrived at the hospital about 1:30 in the morning. I didn't exit the hospital until about 3:30 a.m. I spent another 2 hours just assisting victims and the nurses and whatnot. And then my mother and father arrived to the hospital because I called them again from Hospital Gerard and told them not to come there, that we're in Hospital 44. My father's 86, My mother is 72 years old. They still mobilized themselves in the middle of the night and came to meet me in the hospital. I'm so grateful for them. You know, I was even concerned for their own security, moving around at that so late at night. The soldiers stayed with us till the very end. And it is after I left the hospital at about 3:30 a.m. that the second wave of passengers now arrived from the train, and they were there till dawn. So it took them another 3 hours to evacuate passengers on the train. So there was a huge gap between the first two vehicles that left and the remaining vehicles that came into the.
Hello, I can't hear you anymore, Miss Fatima.
Looks like we've lost her.
Yes. So first of all, IGRS.
I think maybe a network issue. I think she's gone off now. I'll reach her. She will reconnect. I'll ask her to reconnect.
Okay, when she reconnects, thank you, Purple. So IGRS, I just want to, first of all, I want to thank Ms. Fatima for coming to this forum and sharing her experience. Ms. Fatima, your country failed you and failed all the other passengers on that train. You know, the primary responsibility of a government is the security and welfare of its citizens. So your government has failed you. And we are all sorry that you had to undergo such a traumatic experience. We thank God for saving your life and preventing you from injury. We recognize that other families are in mourning who lost their loved ones on that train who will never come back. And that's why this is an existential threat to the country if this kind of security situation continues. And you know what? Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the bravery of the police who were on that train, who, despite being poorly equipped, poorly kitted, no helmets, no bulletproof, will still try to do their best. So I will let IGRS address that particular issue.
Thank you very much, sir. I had mentioned before that the police is suffering from, gross neglect in terms of budgetary allocations and all the other stuff. And when, as an IG, the money that was given for fueling vehicles cannot even fuel the vehicles even at the first headquarters. And they had this issue of envelope budgeting. It is not, they don't give you the money that you require to take care of your organization. They give you the one that they feel they can give to you. After paying emoluments and other allowances, you barely have money for capital to buy all these things we are talking about: boots, armored vehicles, kits, and all those other. Most of the policemen, they buy their kits. That is the truth. They buy their kits. So it is that bad. And somebody was asking, I saw one question on the listing, if state police can come in and solve the problem. I don't know. There are advantages and disadvantages. Policing is local. That is why we're talking about these vigilante groups. And the vigilante groups cannot now wear the toga of, carrying firearms or, engaging bandits. All they have to do is to gather criminal intelligence and, with the help of the local police closest to them, make sure that these things are handled. You also mentioned an issue of people being arrested, taken to the police station, and the police being incapable of doing anything. So which means that the issue of political will, will always come into. There must be a political will on the part of government to deal with these issues that we're thinking about. When Olufalai was kidnapped in 2016, I flew to Akure and met with Mimiko. They were demanding for ransom. I met with Mimiko, it was 50 million then. So I asked him, I said, please, sir, can you advance us the 15? He said, no, IG, why will I get the 50 million? Really? I said, no, give me the 50 million. Let's call any of your bankers. We will treat the money. And I can assure you that once the kidnappers, they put their hands on that money, I will arrest them and I will bring them to book and return your money to you. And he thought I was joking because the police, they have those technical platforms. It's just that they've not been able to utilize it. And the people collected the money at Suleja here in Niger State. They were moving towards, Mina, where the phone that they're using, bargaining for the ransom, we intercepted it. And we were waiting for them at the outskirts of Mina. We picked them up, we recovered the 50 million. They confessed to us. We went back to Akure, the motorcycle they hired, the firearms, 8 of them. Within a space of 2 weeks, we rounded all of them up and prosecuted them. They are presently going through jail term. That is one thing I have said. We've not been able to sustain some of those, successes we recorded at that time. The platform is still there. It's not being utilized. Now people kidnap people, they call them on phone. The phones we cannot track those phones. So something is fundamentally wrong. There is a lacuna somewhere. So those are the issues that I think maybe the telecom people will be telling us, because the police, they have those capabilities. They have them. You cannot, know where you carry, even the once you make a call on that phone to start negotiating for a ransom, the coordinates and everything, will show. So I think we need to really to think about, what we actually want in this country. Are we serious about getting these people and taking them out on the streets? Sir, you have been outside this country for a long time. You know that the crime statistics in New York, Brooklyn, is even more than the one we're talking about in Nigeria.
That's true.
Yes, but the deterrent is that once you commit that crime, you are sure that you will be caught. They'll catch you. So if they catch you, they process you and you go to jail. So why are we not doing the same here? So once there is no consequences for crime will continue to persist. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, IG. And when we talk about crime, let's not just limit it to the armed robbers. The greatest criminals we have in Nigeria are the politicians and the leadership. And I believe that their crimes constitute, according to Buhari, treasonable felony. So they are more dangerous to the population than your armed robbers. You are talking about armed robbers that demanded 50 million. We have a leader in the APC who has a 10 billion naira case. And then we have people who stole 2.8 billion who have been pardoned by the presidency. And so when you're talking about deterrence, accountability, we have none, starting from the very top. And, I still have to harp over this IG that, but IG, what I was talking about is that we do not have any deterrence on any crime, whether it's the armed robbers, it's the kidnappers, it's the bandits. And yes, you have a situation where these terrorists are demanding ransom, talking to their victims with no fear. And I'm really impressed that you were able to do this in 2016. And a lot of people are wondering, why do they have this freedom to still be negotiating with their hostages and the families of the hostages here in 2022? So again, the political will, like you said, is what is missing. And that is where the whole situation is going to depend on. So I'm going to have Ms. Fatima come back on to this webinar. Ms. Fatima, please, you're welcome back.
Thank you. I experienced some power outages as
welcome to
Nigeria. Welcome to Nigeria. I think that I've given enough of an overview of my experience on the train. If you don't mind, I'd also like to discuss a few things with you in terms of some concerns that I've had after the experience and what I've had time to think about, and just that I want to share with this special group. And I think that we have enough stakeholders here where we can make an impact and make a difference by God's grace. This is definitely a war of brothers against brothers. It later was brought to our attention that during the day, earlier during that day, some people had been tipped off that they had seen people on motorcycles approaching the trains with 3 passengers on each motorcycle. Hello, am I still there?
Yes, you're here.
Yes, there was about passengers, two motorcycles with 3 people on them doing fishy stuff by the train. This was apparently, and even I believe Kaduna State government says that they tried to send this message out to the necessary parties that they were suspicions of some foul activity on the trains, but nothing was done. My other point of area of concern is, why isn't there any prevention or security measures along the track of the train? Why isn't there some kind of a no man's land, even barbed wire, to protect the train? There's no perimeter between the train and the surrounding environment. It was too easy for them to approach. It was too easy for them to put a device on the tracks. So I definitely believe that some offensive measures need to be taken, not just this responsive reactionary measures. Proactive offensive measures need to be taken. And in lieu of the war of brothers against brothers, people say that so the people who are committing these crimes are the same people who see you during the daytime, who attend to you, who are in the service sectors during the daytime, and who are destitute and who come out at night, and the people know who they are, which is what I mean by the war of brothers against brothers. In that case, I think that the security measures, intelligence measures need to be extremely stepped up in terms of surveillance, tracking, and even accountability. Like the former IG has been saying, how can they be calling in on cell phones and not being tracked? And this is not the first time that the train has been attacked. It's not the second time the train has been, it's not the third time. Why haven't there measures, and why has anything been done? I think that we are in a position, we're in a unique opportunity now that there's momentum and it's support both from the public and stakeholders to take this opportunity to make some drastic solutions, to form some strategic partnerships, to have a dialogue, to address the issues. I do believe other issues are mass employment, the need for representation, the fact that these people are disconnected from government policies and messaging. I've dropped also a presentation in the chat group where I've listed about 8 areas of urgent concern and the need for solutions to be proffered from the grassroots, where mothers, fathers, women need to be empowered. We can key into multiple programs. I think that this needs to be a comprehensive solution, and that more needs to be done. And we've just been sitting and just watching and reacting. However, I did take the road today from Abuja to Kaduna. I left Abuja at about 12:30, 1 o'clock this afternoon, and I arrived into Kaduna just before 4 p.m. And I was happy to see there were so many patrols on the road, but the patrols I saw, they're all military. There were tanks and pickup trucks, the Hiluxes with the soldiers and with the guns sticking out. There were multiple of them on the motorcycles patrolling, which raises the issue that military seems to be the only security framework that we have available to us in Nigeria to address these issues, and it's not enough. They're doing more. The police needs to be empowered. Other intelligence agencies need to be empowered. The women themselves need to be empowered. There needs to be a return to traditional values. And I also believe that there's an absence of national identity. There's too much tribalism going on. We need to proactively proffer national identity, do things, whether it be sports, entertainment, whatever it is, to bring people together, because there's definitely strength and unity, and it's too easy to conquer us once we're divided. Everybody knows that you divide and conquer. I think we also should step back and look at the bigger issue and try to stay calm. Just I'm speaking to myself because my heart still is racing after the incident. I've been doing some breathing techniques and just trying to stay active. I've been surrounded by family, colleagues, friends, and loved ones. I thank God for my blessings. I thank God that I wasn't shot. I thank God I wasn't abducted. I thank God I wasn't killed. I also want to take a moment to pray for the people who have not been returned. Every time I see the video circulating, it triggers me. What would I do if I was at the campsite? So I just want to urge people that we need to strengthen intelligence. We need to strengthen our security agencies, and we need to empower the families and the mothers, programs of the grassroots to teach people fundamentally from right from wrong. Because I did speak to another retired general, and I was complaining that how can you first, create a society where there's no schools, there's no education, there's no water, there's no light. They fall into criminal activities and then blame them for being criminals. And his response was, no matter how destitute and how desperate you are, there's no excuse for killing fellow Nigerian citizens. And I believe with him, I agree with him, that's completely right. So, there needs to be accountability, there needs to be accountability, and we need to be more proactive and taking offensive measures to rectify the problem. And that's just what I would like to share with the group today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fatima. I don't know if you got the message that time when you went offline, but we do thank you for your courage. We know you really went through a traumatic experience, and hopefully surrounded by the love of your family, you will heal. Thank you for your bravery during that episode, and we also have to remember that we still have 150 hostages that are still out in the forest as of today, and who we still need to bring back home. I'm going to segue to this tool, because this issue of cell phone tracking and these kidnappers calling. I'm going to call on the Deputy Director General of the National Identity Management Commission to address us on this forum. So please, and those who are putting their hands up, you will still get a chance. We'll call you sometime. But the Director General of the NIM, please, the floor is for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Greetings to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for inviting me to share my experience on the webinar theme, Security in Nigeria, what should we do? And the topic given to me is that building a digital identity for all Nigerians. Why is it important, and what you can do to make it happen? Thank God that both the former IG and also Fatima mentioned that there's need for national identity among all the things that she has said. Of course, we know that the primary duty of government anywhere in the world is to protect the citizens and their territory. And national security is the security and defense of the sovereign state, including its citizens, economy, institution, infrastructure, borders, waters, etc. And of course, it was originally conceived as protection against military attack, or national security is widely understood to also include non-military dimensions, including currently security from terrorism, minimization of crime, economic, energy, environmental, food, and also water security, including the cyber security. Well, elected officials also of any nation have the responsibility of ensuring the management of the security sector is in line with democratic best practices and the provision of security as a public good. And that government also bears the political responsibility for the activities of the security sector. So as a result, the government needs detailed and extensive plans and management structures to ensure security policies and practices are transparent and accountable. Government must also ensure that the legal framework for the activities of each security sector institution is exhaustive. Additionally, legal frameworks in the country need to incorporate and facilitate access to information for the public and democratic institution on time. So why identity is important and what we can do to make it happen. A nation cannot truly be a sovereign state if it does not know its people or have a unique way of identifying them. Somehow in Nigeria, maybe we were lucky that we do not know our people, and also we have been surviving so far. So, but there is no nation on earth that I know of that do not know its citizen. In the US, there's a social security number that connects everything. In the UK, they have very good birth registration, and also with their postcode and your date of birth and your surname, they can 95% identify you. But even in small countries surrounding us, all of them don't joke with identity, but not in Nigeria. So government knowledge of its people, that is a citizen, and also the residents, because if you take only the citizen and not the other residents, you are putting a loophole. Is fundamental to planning and is also foundational to all the pillars of society. This knowledge must always begin at birth, with birth registration, and also extend to issuance of a unique identifier through a national system that is giving identification for life. And this knowledge also must also extend to who are you, where you live, your social and economic circumstances, and others. And that establishing a foundational ID is a first step to providing access to all basic government services. And that civil registration and vital statistics and the national identity management system are designated as foundational IDs in Nigeria. So without proper identity, people are also excluded from basic services that provide foundation for support. And also without the identity, we may not be able to have proper budgeting, proper planning. And as the IG says, most of our budgeting is envelope based, therefore it's like no budgeting whatsoever. So why identity matters? I've listed many things in the paper. I'll issue to you. Access to identification is a human right under the International Convention, and also providing legal identity for all, including birth registration by the year 2030 is the target 16.9 under the SDGs. That is why we celebrate the Identity Day, September 16 worldwide. And that birth and death registration also are inputs to the national ID. So it's not only birth registration, we also need death registration. Otherwise, in all our databases, there will be dead people that are full of that system. And we need to strengthen this system. So why identity matters for development also, it is inclusive and trusted ID system can help achieve a lot of goals. Some of them are empowering individuals and enhancing their access to rights, services, and also the formal economy, strengthening the transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness of the governance and service delivery. It also helps to grow the digital economy and also fast-tracking regional and global integration, because like in the Europe, when they see someone crossing the Mediterranean, they want to know from which country that person is. And one of the ways of some African people is to reach there and say that they are from Nigeria so that they can be brought to Nigeria. And that identity is generating reliable and continuous statistics to measure progress and also inform the policy. And there are also multiple development goals, like access to financial services through proper KYC, that is know your customer, even the gender equality and empowerment, access to basic health and education services, child protection, migration, improve access and quality of social protection, and enhance security and safety. But there's a challenge, there is a gap, and this gap is based on the rate at which our population is growing. We have estimated population of more than 200 million, as we know, but our estimated annual population growth rate for the country is about 2.6% or 5.2 million. But that is the estimated. But empirically, like in 1st January 2020, there were more than 26,000 new births were recorded. Every new year, we always record the number of children that to find out who is the new birth, and we record 26,000. And you'll agree with me that there is no parent that plans for that particular day. So that is exactly what is always happening every day. And if you multiply by 365 and even take 20% off, you'll see that we have about 7.6 million people that we add to the population every year. So that is where the fundamental of most of our problems that comes up. So between 2012 and now, we have enrolled just about 80 million citizens and legal residents, and we issued them unique IDs. So this is an average of 8 million per annum. And at this rate, so it means that we will never finish the enrollment. So that is why the federal government came up with a strategic ecosystem roadmap to ensure that everyone is registered at once with the help of World Bank, AFD, that is French Development Agency, and also the EU. So what's the contribution to that? As you know, NIMSI is saddled with the responsibility of establishing and regulating a reliable and sustainable national identity management system, and also to harmonize all the disparate databases that we have in the country. So an effective data management system for national security will ensure seamless data sharing and also cross-referencing the national identity management system across all security agencies in the country. So even if you find the telephone, if you do not know the owner of that phone, then it may become useless. Or when they use the victim's phone, then that gives you an idea of the location where that phone is being used, and probably is the first time that that phone is used at that location. And therefore, the person that uses that will also definitely use another phone to call someone else. So using network analysis is very easy to find locations to identify the culprits, just as the IG has said. So as a foundational identity provider, NIMSI will provide insight for faster action and good governance, actionable information for decision-making, as well as identification and authentication avenues for individuals to assert their own identity. Our data can also be used by government to effectively plan for current and also future policies, as well as other government projects. So what we can do as government and individuals to make the ID project happen. So there are many things we can do as government, non-state actors, and also individuals to accelerate the development and utilization of the identity in Nigeria. They include, but are not limited to, the following, like buy-in and support of the ID project, trust the process, because we believe in the technology, and we believe that the technology will take us out of this and make it a trustworthy system, and and that we use an ecosystem approach so that we can resolve this issue of sustainability. Since 2012, it has been stable that we've been working around the clock to make sure that this system is in place. And then we can also present ourselves to be registered and issued the unique ID. We can be champions and ambassadors of the ID project of the government. We should leverage the use of ID to facilitate access to basic services and social safety nets. We should join in creating awareness and also educating our own cycle of influence on the need for the ID. I believe that there's a lot of gap in awareness and also educating the populace in what national ID means. And also we can be advocates for funding of the ID project, just like the IG says that there's no funding. So that is why we have to now go out of the box to get even the development partners, to put them as a group to make sure that we tackle the issue head on. And because we have to enroll the backlog of the population that we don't have. Meanwhile, that every year, again, we are adding more and more into the population. So we need more policing, we need more teachers, we need everything just because of that population that we have been adding. We need to support harmonization and integration of all the disparate databases that they need to talk to each other. If they are not talking to each other, then we may not be able to get the intelligence that we are likely to get. We have to collaborate with government also on the linkages of legacy and functional ID system with the foundational. Then we can also help to push the enactment of data protection law for Nigeria to support the ID program. In ID for Africa, I found that small countries like Mauritius, that they have 18 years of experience doing data protection, but the giant of Africa is nowhere to be found. Then we can also partner with NIMSI to enforce the compliance of mandatory use of the NIN and also the ID regulation. So as individuals also, we have to preach that we have to be law-abiding and orderly. We have to look out for one another, as Fatima said, is brothers fighting brothers. We have to instill good morals to our children and the future generation. We also have to lead by examples. And also we have to stop negative branding of our country. This is especially for our Nigerians in diaspora. So we get a lot of negativity of branding our own nation. We have to commence mentoring of our youths. We have to ensure that there's appropriate reward and punishment for actions, and also join in the community watch and policing of our neighborhoods. Just like the IG says, policing is local. So we all have to be local. We pay attention to unusual activities and suspicious persons and report them, then work with the law enforcement agencies to stop and also solve crime. Thank you for listening. I wait your questions.
Thank you very much, DG Abubakar. And you raised a number of salient points, and one of the most important points you made was the rate of our population growth at 7 million a year. It has been predicted that by the year 2100, Nigeria's population will overtake that of China. Nigeria will be the third most populous nation on earth, with about 750 million people. So if you think we have problems now, DG, the problems haven't started, okay? Because this rate of population growth is not sustainable for us. And so it's very important to have agencies like yours that are assisting in the planning. But I also want to mention, DG, that If you identify the culprits, the terrorists, the kidnappers, and you don't prosecute them, I mean, what's the best form of identity than people bring the kidnappers to the police station? I mean, they're right in front of you. You don't need an identity number, but if the police don't prosecute them, it renders everything null and void. So we need a political will, DG. We need a political will in implementing this and to understand that we are already having a problem. There's a fire burning with this demographic, it's called a demographic time bomb. So it's important that you let the leadership know that we have no time to waste. The time to save the country is right now. But I will call the next item, which will be the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecoms Operators of Nigeria to come and speak. But DJ, please stay on the forum because after that, we're going to have questions and answers from the audience. So I see a number of hands up. So they are very eager to talk to you and talk to IGRSA. And so please stand by as I call the Chairman Alton to the floor.
Thank you very much for having me. Can I just confirm from the house if you can hear me well, please?
We can hear you, but you're breaking up. And since you are in charge of telecommunications, we should be hearing you better.
Okay, but is my audio clear enough other than the latency on the line? Because I have this device here. I don't know whether it's speaking well enough.
It's clear. It's clear. Just go ahead and yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I join in welcoming everyone, and I thank the organizers of this forum for bringing to light the challenges of our discussion on this topic today. I also pray that Life Perpetual will shine on our faithful departed brother, and the Lord will continue to uphold the family we have left behind. Quite touching hearing the account of our young lady who survived the train attack, and also hearing from the former IG arrested. And I must greet you, IG sir, for the work done. Your legacy remains something to remember in the police force. Your time there was quite progressive. I really thank you for the work that you did there. Subscribers are identifiable on the network. All SIM cards today are identifiable. All callers are identifiable. All SIM-enabled devices are identifiable. And sources of calls are also traceable. In essence, there is no device that is driven by a SIM card today that cannot be located or whose activities or actions cannot be monitored. And the big question is, when we know, what do we do? And I say to people generally, if there is something you don't want anyone to be aware, don't do it on the digital platform, because somebody somewhere will have a record of your activity or a record of the content of what you have done there. So as an industry, we're able to provide information for security agencies. There is what is called geolocation, which has been mentioned by the IGRSA. We know where calls are made, we know where calls originate from, who sends it when required. We give the information to them what happens next. That's not in our control. And I think this speaks to the bigger issue. I must also say, since we're on the closed forum, I can mention that there is what is called lawful intercept by security agencies, that agencies of government that are empowered to intercept calls of places of interest. So this is done without recourse to the telecom operators. They have the means by which they can badge into calls and monitor conversation of persons of interest. And also, along with telecom operators, identify the physical location of those people. So really and truly, there is no hiding place for the national network. Because other than that, all SIM cards are now fully registered. Most SIM cards are now linked to national identification number. So for us, it's now without any effort to be able to identify people who are doing things on the network. And and what they do there, where they do. But the big question is, after this information is provided to the security agency, what are they able to do with the information provided? And I think this is where we have the problem. As service providers, we will continue to guarantee availability of service. The other risk that we face in the industry is in the closure of telecom sites. When the lady was mentioning the account of the incident on the way to Kaduna, that some networks have services, some don't have services. It speaks to first can be due to the terrain at the time, can also have been due to an action of government. I don't know, you may have read in the papers in the last days, challenge in Kogi State, where some of the sites of operators in Kogi State were shut down due to dispute or revenue collection by Kogi State government. The implication of shutting down those sites in Kogi was that it had a significant impact on other states, around 10 states around Kogi, including the federal capital, Abuja. So the big question is, if you have an incident during that time of outage, this is not in the control of operators. You can't support anyone. Even devices or lawful interface will not work at those times. So, and this is something that people who are in government need to think about. Telecommunications, social services, security services, and it's something that we all require to keep us safe. So while we guarantee service availability, where we guarantee to provide information about people wherever or whenever, we also must appeal to people in government to be mindful of their actions that don't have direct or indirect impact on smooth operation of telecom services. Now, one of the things that I've been asked is why have victims' phone calls, phones being used to make calls, and they're not traceable? The answer is no, they are traceable. But if they have a victim with them, they know that they will be identified, they know that they can be identified, they take the phone of that victim to make calls to negotiate ransom. The best we can do as network providers is to provide information about the location of that SIM card at that particular time. Sometimes, interestingly, they move around. So as we change location, we're able to provide information for the agencies as the need arises. But again, that's the best that we can do. What comes out of this information provided is no longer in our control. And it speaks to the larger problem that IGRS talked about, the strength of the police force and as well as the resources available to the police to do their work. In other clients, these are things that goes without saying, but here everything is silent. So even if they are aware, they don't have resources to monitor or to arrest or to intercept a physical intersection, it's a challenge. It's of no effect. So on our side, we guarantee availability of services at all times in all places, provided that there are no actions of government impacting on availability to provide services. Also, we also are able to support security agencies by providing information about location of people of interest. Security agencies within their own tool of work have access to persons of interest if they want to by the use of lawful intercept devices. But that's just about the best we can do as an industry. Without the security being able to track and trace after receiving information, there's really not much we can do. So it's a lot of work in progress. We're all stakeholders in this, and we must continue to have this conversation, whether that's going to challenge government, but because also it could be any of us. And our thoughts and prayers go out to those who are still being held by the kidnappers. We pray that they will come back safe. So our sister who is on this call, we'll be in prayers. We pray for quick recovery from the shock, and also to draw strength in the fact that there are many people who are praying and supporting you at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Adebayo. And we are all reassured by the information you have provided that yes, these calls are traceable. The question is that when you provide the information, how is the information being used? So that's a very key thing. So I'm going to call on questions and answers for the next few minutes. So the first person I said I was going to call was going to be Kede here. After that, it will be Pride Osayame, if he's still on the forum. And then after that will be Godwin Amobi. So Kede, you have the floor now, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me first of all also extend my condolences to those who were victims of this terrorist act. And also congratulations to you, Dr. Sota, for putting up a very excellent event in commemoration of our dear brother, Nowa. May his soul rest in peace and may your family be comforted.
Amen.
After listening to Fatima, I think I changed my approach to this, and it's going to be very short. I weigh my words carefully. I am one of those who hate to be proved right. And so whatever is happening in Nigeria now saddens me because I had mentioned this over 30 years. It's very sad. I think the way forward, I mentioned a behavioral change initiative to put together all these beautiful ideas that have been mentioned. And by the way, I am privileged to have mentioned some of these issues with IGP Arase. We are suffering this in Edo State, especially in Edo South. I understand Benin City is ring-fenced and is okay with security, but these headers challenges goes beyond just failure of government. As individuals, what are we really doing? I see that certain individuals collaborate with these so-called herdsmen. They are the ones who bring these people in. So we can't really have a system in place if the people you're working with are not collaborating with the security agencies. But to keep it brief, I think my question will be in terms of leadership. I wish you had brought in a politician. From the legal aspect, myself and Dr. Rase were lawyers, and I'm sure there are other lawyers on this platform. The judiciary has a lot to answer for. It's actually, to my mind, not fit for purpose. It's just sad that a profession one has been in for a long time is heavily challenged. So if you do not prosecute people, you have conflicting judgments all over the place. There's corruption, and you name it. It's just not fit for purpose. We just have to tell it like it is. Maybe sad to some people. And then we have to reform the police force. We've been talking about state policing. Vigilante is not necessarily the solutions. It's a short-term solution, but if you have a state policing system in place, I think it will make things easier and answer a lot of questions. And so for now, I would just say that this platform is a short-term resolution of the issues. At least we've identified the issue. So it's no longer about identity. We know the identifications of the issues. But let me commend you, Dr. Sota, because you said something that's very instructive, the political will. And this political will can only be resolved in 2023. We cannot allow, and I'm saying it with all sense of responsibility, we cannot allow this crop of, I'm just trying to choose my language in a public forum. I'm so angry at the level of irresponsibility of politicians who are scheming so hard to be president. And this is public knowledge. You have people who have, how will I put it, a criminal case hanging over their heads. No shame. And they come out to say they want to be presidents, they want to be governors, they want to go to the House of Reps, they want to be senators. That is the level we've sunk in Nigeria. And so if we don't do something about it in 2023 and elect responsible people, I'm afraid in 20, 40 years, Nigeria will be worse than what it is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kede. And by the way, for introduction, Kede is an attorney, a barrister practicing in the United Kingdom. He's publisher of the Nigeria magazine. And I will allow the IG Arase to address your issue about state policing, but I'd like to say the politicians that we have in Nigeria are like pigs feeding in a trough. They just keep on arranging themselves. It doesn't depend on their political party. They just arrange themselves so that they just keep on feeding in the trough, and they resemble the Emperor Nero, who was playing his fiddle while Rome burned. And that's what exactly they are doing. The country is burning, but all they're thinking about is how to protect their ill-gotten assets, not how to really save this country. So Ajarese, please, can you address Kede's question? He feels that state policing is more effective than this vigilante. And you yourself have said, Ajarese, we don't have enough police to police the space. Neither are the police being taken care of. Their welfare is not being taken care of. And then we also have a corrupt judiciary. I believe Arese, you are a lawyer too. And so the corruption is a cancer that's killing the country. It's a cancer. But anyway, I'll let Arese address this before I call the next question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. What my brother here has just said is true. Yes, a lot of people, they crave for state policing. The only problem I have with state police, that is why I am more fixated with community partnership in internal security management. The problem you have with state police is that our governors that we have, they are not politically matured to be able to handle the police. The governors who, even with local government, they are not giving them the space to operate. They cannot even pay salaries. There are some states that are owing salaries that can't pay salary. The minimum wage that they said they were going to pay, they have not been able to pay. By the time you come and add police to their wage bill, they will now have to start taking care of their barracks, buying them firearms, buying them equipment. Even with the security votes that most of them they collect, they don't intervene in their various policing in their various states. It's only very few of them who have been able to come up with an architecture that can manage internal security, like Lagos. Where Lagos set up the trust fund, where they were pulling in money here and there, and making sure that they set up the RRS and all this. Other states, they don't do that. They don't apply their security funds for taking care of the security in their various states. And that is why the security in some states are deteriorating, while some, are effective. So I don't know what we have to do to be able to make sure that governors, they are more tolerant of, criticisms. Most of them, once they get in there, if you are not careful as their political opponent, you will not come into the states. So they won't allow you to come into their states. They will bar you from coming into they are that bad. Could you ever imagine, sir, that the governor of New York could have been asked to step down, Kumo, over, misdemeanor like, tampering with his female workers? Can that happen in Nigeria? It cannot happen. They see they see everything as an entitlement once you get there. I was talking with a governor once, and about somebody who was criticizing him, and he told me, he says, Solomon, do you know that this man does not realize that I'm not a governor? So what he was saying is that he was going to deal with him, and he actually went ahead and started dealing with him. So our political culture is still that primordial one. When you are a king or chief, nobody dares, challenge you with whatever you are doing. So there must be an internal framework to guide the conduct of these governors when they are there. What are the constraints we have to put in there that a governor who misbehaves while he's there, after his tenure, he should be liable to prosecution for other human rights abuses or something like that. It is when we do such things and make sure that they imbibe it. Now with this immunity, they are always fighting for now. Once they are living as governor, they are going to the National Assembly. So even all those they are misdemeanor while they were in the states, they try to avoid it by going to the National Assembly to become senators or something. So we really have a problem, sir. The state police may not be the panacea to the issue of internal security now. There must be a change of mindset, just as I here has said, of all Nigerians, including the political class. There must be a change of mindset. Thank you.
Thank you, IG Arese. You raised several very important things, which I will just talk about before I invite the next. I will interrupt the questions and invite Governor Fayemi. But you talked about several important things, and that which makes state policing dangerous, because our governors will be out of control if they have the ability to use the state police to intimidate their political opponents. And then you mentioned also the security vote. A combination of unaudited security vote and an immunity clause in the Constitution is a roadmap to failure. It's a roadmap for corruption. And you see, everything that is happening in the country in terms of corruption at the state level is related to these two things: immunity and security vote. So I've thought about it, and I believe that we need an office of the Inspector General in Nigeria, an office of the Inspector General that will provide oversight over state agencies, ministries, and parastatals, and hold the civil service accountable, which means that because a governor alone by himself cannot sign a check, civil servants are part of the process in signing that check. So if the governor has immunity, then the civil servants don't have immunity. So if we need to throw the Minister of Finance in jail, throw the Commissioner of Finance in jail, bring them to trial as aiders and abettors of any corruption the governor is doing, then we're going to bring sanity to the polity. Because recently, Governor Obiano withdrew $4 billion reported in newspapers on the last day he was leaving. Who were those who colluded with him to withdraw the state commonwealth? Even in 2015, when Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala diverted $322 million of recovered Abacha loot to the National Security Advisor, he did that with the signatory of President Jonathan. But that was a violation of the due processes that were required. So we need to hold our civil service responsible. They don't have immunity. And when you hold them responsible and you put some of them in jail, they will think twice before they aid and abet these governors in looting the Commonwealth and in spending the security votes like it's their personal piggy bank. So I'm going to just hold off on the questions for now and call the chairman of the National Governors Forum, Governor Fayemi. And Governor Fayemi, please, you can address what I talked about, holding the civil service accountable for the crimes of your fellow governors. Okay, Governor Fayemi, you have the forum. Thank you.
He was there for some time.
Okay, I'm going to call the next person. Pride, are you here?
Yes, I am here, Doctor.
Okay, please, the floor is yours.
After thank you very much.
Thank
you very much, Doctor. I want to start by honoring the person who brought us together, and that is my one and only Dr. Nowa Omoigui. May so rest in peace.
Amen.
I want to thank the family for keeping his legacy going. It's very deserving. I have some quick questions. Actually, before I start, I also want to thank all those who have served Nigeria in one capacity or the other. And to our honorable IGP, Arase, I tip my hat to you. We remain proud of you. I have some quick questions here based on some of the discussions that I walked into. Mine is going to be very fast and brief because I have some bullet points. The vigilante group, for example. As a citizen, when I see too much reliance on vigilante groups, it's an indirect way of telling me that my government is overwhelmed. Why don't we have a massive recruitment of police and just let the citizens give us intelligence instead? I know that the politicians take too much money off the table to be able to do that, but it may just be the answer to a lot of our security problems. Because I don't see a lot of coordination with the vigilante group. For example, it's unfortunate that Governor Fayemi left the stage. The governors went to governors forum where they had their usual annual meeting. after they left that forum, the Southwest governors formed Amotekun. Many of the governors who were in that forum with them were taken by surprise. They did not even know that. Here you have a situation where we are having security issues all over the country. Governors came together, didn't even have a plan. No cooperation. These governors went out and launched Amotekun to the surprise of their fellow governors. That just tells me that there is no coordination there. Now, the IGP talked about the danger in having these vigilante groups wear the toga of the police. Well, it becomes very difficult to prevent that because by the nature of security itself, in order to survive, they may play police. How do you prevent that? You know, my wife had an encounter at the Ring Road in Benin City with a vigilante group individual. He came out of Forestry Road trying to go into the ring where their office was and just cut in and sideswiped my wife's car. They all everything came to a standstill. My wife was just telling him, you can't do that. He just went into his trunk of his car and brought a sort of shotgun and said, I will blow your brains out. I'm a vigilante group. Just like that. I'm not making this up. Everybody came to the scene, were just angry with this guy. They finally ended up in the ring where his supervisor came out and was very angry at him. I said, how could you do that to a citizen? Just because you're a vigilante group doesn't give you the right to either try to shoot somebody. They apologized and everybody went away. But I'm just trying to tell you, they are not trained. They are not police officers, but they will play that, whether we like it or not. So massive police recruitment, and just let the citizens give us intelligence, because they know where everything is buried in their community. It's probably the way to go. The IG also talked about police neglect. What they have done in the United States was to start the police union. Because police, by their very training, even the military, they don't have the luxury of going to protest. They don't protest, but they have a job to do. So they set up a police union that is their mouthpiece, that addresses their grievances to the politicians. And they go into agreements through MOUs and everything to make sure that police, whether it is their accommodation, salary packages, benefits are all addressed so that police can continue to do their work. Now, I'm not talking about the police commission, but the police commission addresses the power sharing between the federal government, president, police IGP, and the state governors. And from what we heard, according to Falana, that group has never met. But I'm talking about a police union that addresses the police issues so that a lot of things, like I said, from their salaries to when they travel all over the country, they don't have money. We hear stories of police officers sleeping on the floor in their new offices because they don't have accommodation. These things have to be addressed. You know, so that's what I have on the table. Hopefully the IG can help us address that. I thank you all once again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Pride. It's a Pride of Sayame. Is an activist. Is based in Los Angeles, California. And so IG Arase, please, you can see some of the issues you were even mentioning about the abuse of state police, even with the vigilantes now. You have people already beginning to abuse the public. Thank you, please.
Thank you very much, sir. That is when I think it has to do with the human psychology. Once you give any Nigerian small power, they want to extend it beyond the mandate you are giving to them. We saw that in the Bakassi boys. We saw that in the Niger Delta, vigilante groups where they started taking laws into their hands. I was discussing with my cousin, Fekwamba, who is a judge in Benin, and she was telling me that the number of criminal cases, especially murder, extrajudicial killing, in her courts against the vigilante group is increasing by the day. And myself, I here and some committee of friends, we've been trying to see how we can assist the vigilante groups in the 7 local government areas in Edo State. And when they came up with the logo, I spoke with Ahir. I said, look at this logo. You know, it gives the semblance of a force. It was a sword and a gun. I said, so if we are going to do anything to give to them as gifts, we should remove that sword. It's a civil, it's supposed to be an intelligence gathering body that will feed intelligence into the conventional police system and even go with them, on patrols so that they will be more guided. And, just what our brother Price said, they are not well trained, so we'll have to start emphasizing that there must be some, bookish acquaintance with gathering intelligence rather than taking on, themselves as an alternative police force. I think all those things can be done. The fears of pride is very, very real. Nigerians will like wearing uniform. If you even see what last man is doing in Lagos, all these the traffic warning, all those people, once you give them a little power, they want to exceed in this thing. So it's all about training. How do you prevent the vigilante from, okay, I mentioned that the police union, well, I don't know, the police is seen in Nigeria as one of the essential services, and we cannot, have unions. In 2007, when they went on strike, that was what led to to Smith being sacked and Tafa being brought on board. Recently, again, when they were trying to agitate for better welfare and all those other things, some of them were rounded up and sacked. So you see, I think it has to do with the political culture we have in this country. We're not accommodating of, that. I said, I mentioned it to some people. I said, those boys should have been brought to come and sit down and discuss with management, what are these grievances you're talking about? Can we address them instead of just, summarily sacking them, from the police? Now you sack them, you've trained them to handle weapons, you've trained them, in some security, this thing. Those ones are ready, they are ready people to be employed by the criminal gang if you're not careful. So we actually have problems. So, but I always tell people that security sector reform is not a sprint, it's a marathon. All we just need is the right people in the right places to be able to think through these things, then the political will to be able to get it done. The forces that we're admiring in the country today, the British police system that we acquired, they went through this period, this one that we are going through here, extrajudicial killing, corruption, this and that, before they were reformed. The same thing with the US too. Minority rights in the US, when it comes to law enforcement, it's also a big issue. So I'm sure we are going to get there. I'm very optimistic. That is why any opportunity I have to assist law enforcement agents, I always want to do it. Even in terms of bringing in people from outside to come and train them, to come and organize courses for them. In 7 years I've retired now. I have been doing that for, the IGs who want to listen, to say, look, we can always get this support from these people. Come and train these people and let them do the job better. So I think we'll get there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, IG Arese. And I'm going to, before I go to the next question, I'm going to go to another speaker, Dr. Omoigui. If I go, please, can you inform me if Dr. Omoigui is available?
Yes, I'm
okay.
Yes, I'm there.
Please, you have the floor.
Yes, my perspective is a traditional institution, and I'm looking at it from the statutory rule. It's not as we have the traditional institution now. It's not the way it was in those days. So the traditional rulers go by the rules or edicts of government as we speak. Things like ceremonial things like representing the autonomous communities, receiving important visitors and all that, and presiding over meetings. And there are obligations to the immediate community, like acting as custodians of culture, custom, tradition and advising on them. And when you talk about custom, you know, custom is dynamic and it's a way of life. And we've been talking about security issues. So there must be certain things about security which are embedded in the custom. And I think at this level, the traditional rulers will be able to identify that if they work hand in hand with the police. The other aspect is taking steps to reconcile warring parties and all that. Here again, it looks like a failure of the state system, official system of reconciliation, the courts and all that. Those take a lot of time. So at the traditional institution level, these things are done, and they have always been there from time immemorial. We have always had ways of settling disputes, and this kind of alternative dispute mechanism should actually be encouraged so that all the time wasting and the cost of litigation in formal courts will be reduced. You also have this issue of promoting peace and stability. I think what we are talking about now is peace and stability. It's a role assigned to the traditional institution, and I'm sure they have had ways of doing this over time. I think the challenge really is that government is also doing the same things, and maybe because of power of coercion and all that, they're able to undermine what happens at this level of the people. And of course, encouraging development. Most things we're talking about here, but on development, we have talked about security, we've talked about the welfare of the people. So at that level, development is encouraged. So if government devolves a lot of powers to this level in terms of deciding what type of development is required, I'm sure that the security challenges will be reduced considerably. Those are statutory roles. And if you look at it from roles attributed, okay, roles towards the state, what the state cannot do well is also passed to them, assisting in maintenance of law and order. And within this subhead, we've talked about, what do they call this one? We've said policing is local. I do know that sometime about 2 years ago, it was popular all over the place. And the talk was about community policing and all that. I think people were really recruited and trained, and they must have been recommended by the traditional rulers who actually understand the kind of people recommended. So if policing is local, government should actually encourage this kind of information gathering tool using the local people that are actually known to the people and they know where the criminals are. Also, at the local level, it's assist government in collecting taxes. Well, I think this role is just there. Maybe it was there in the Bible all those years. In modern times, I think the government, most governments use contractors and consultants to do that work. I don't think there is any traditional institution that is allowed to collect taxes in modern times. Of course, because the traditional rulers meet with other, let's say, local government and others, it means that's a channel of communication, in which case, if there are issues that have to do with the people, it's better passed through the traditional institution because these are the people who are closer, people who understand the society and all that. In terms of attribution of roles, what I've discussed so far is about statutory roles or roles given in edicts. You also have rules attributed. So what should these people be doing really as ordinary people? What do you think they should be doing? And you have things like Well, fathers of the people, fathers of the community, that means somebody has to be there as a mentor for the people, impartial person, advising and all that. Mediation between the people and the state. People have grievances. And how do they get to government for government to understand? Because the politicians who are maybe councillors or members of the House of Assembly or House of Representatives, they are actually not present to represent the people. Another one is enhancing national identity and sense of belonging. Most of the things we have discussed today in terms of security border on identity. How do you really identify somebody? I think the most credible source of identification is at the community level. The identification at that level is also serves as a means of verification, validation. Somebody has a phone, National Identity Management has registered this thing and all that. In case there has to be a validation, it will be good to get back to the smallest unit of the society, which is at the traditional level and all that.
So, Chris.
In that regard, it's good to note that the traditional institution or the community, as we call it, is the most unique, the most cohesive unit in the society, vis-a-vis the maze of amorphous nation states. It's not easy for people to move around and all that. It's so complex. But you can trace people, you can handle people, you can get to know what people are through the community they belong to and all that. It's also a means of identification of the family. Most of the things we've been talking about today, I think some have been hanging. You are talking about the individual. How do you even get to that individual? There has to be a breakdown of the society into manageable units. And that's what the traditional institution does. And it also gives the member a sense of identity, a sense of belonging.
We have to summarize here at this point.
Okay, that's just what I'm summarizing. Is a sense of identity, a sense of belonging. So government in its sole role should actually be careful at that level, that's the basic unit through which you can manage another. So that's all I can say for now. I don't know because the time is really fast. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chris. Dr. Chris Omoigui is actually a traditional ruler, and he's the
also a tax person. Also a tax person.
Okay, and a tax person.
Not collecting tax for government.
Okay. So I'm going to go to because we are pressed for time because Ramadan break is about right now. I'm going to the last speaker for now. I have a Reverend, if I could, what's the name of the next? Reverend Cornelius Omoigui. Are you here, please? He's the Executive Secretary of the Interreligious Council.
Omoigui.
Omoigui. 1 minute, please, because the Ramadan fast has to start in a minute. So please go ahead, Reverend.
Yeah, what role has religion here? Well, like the Nigeria Interreligious Council, what we have been trying to do is trying to make sure that one of the strategies of the terrorists does not work. And what is the strategy? To cause religious conflict, war, so that when the Christians and the Muslims are fighting each other, there becomes an avenue for them to loot. But the Muslims have said in clear terms that the terrorists don't represent Islam. But then if we want to come back to our specific intra-religious, as Christian within Islam or within ATR, we discover that our people in government, they are either Christians or Muslims. I was very happy when the IG was talking, and I know that he's a Christian. When he was IG, I used to ask him, come, what can we do in this perspective? So I believe that the religious leaders, if they can talk to their political leaders, have meeting with them, tell them to represent the ideas of their religion, to practice the virtues that the religion, propagate, I think the country will be better. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I have one other speaker, Barrister San Al-Hassan Akeju, to discuss changes in electoral law to encourage people to participate. So San Akeju, please, you have the floor. Then after you, I'm going to have Godwin Amobi, who's had his hands up for quite a while, to give the last question before we have Egosa Omoigui give us a 5 minutes takeaway. So Al-Hassan Akeju, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to go straight to the point, there are several changes that have been enthroned by the 2022 Electoral Act aimed at, enthroning credibility in the electoral process. For instance, by virtue of the new Electoral Act, precisely Section 3, the funds that will be required for election, must be released at least 1 year before the election. This is the first time that we're having this since 1960. It is to ensure that INEC will have adequate time to prepare for the election in order for us to have a credibility. Also, INEC is now given the power to review election results declared under duress. That is by virtue of Section 65. So that the aim is to ensure that the votes of the electorate count at every point. So this is the first time INEC is the body, that conducts election if maybe a returning officer is forced to declare a result. It will not just be for the court. INEC, that is the alter ego, is actually given the power by this new act to now, review and see that if the result does not accord with what actually transpired, or the procedure to be followed before the declaration, then INEC will now review the election and cancel it and order a fresh election. There is also a new introduction, that is the electronic transmission of results. Before now, it is only by guidelines of INEC, that makes provision for transmission. Now the law has now permitted INEC to do electronic transmission, so that if there is any dispute, regarding what is collated manually, in order to ensure that the time is not wasted, you use the electronic collated result to now ensure that what actually transpired is what you have. So amongst other innovations that we have, like, there is this question that has been in public domain regarding, the additional qualification that has now been provided for political appointees to now resign their appointment before they can actually participate in the primaries of their political parties. So, the challenge has been that the Electoral Act is an inferior law as compared to the Constitution. The Constitution having provided the requirements for contesting election, can the National Assembly, by virtue of an inferior law, now introduce a requirement that is not recognized by the Constitution. For instance, sections 66, section 107, 134, and 182 of the Constitution already provide that it is only public servants that are required to resign their appointment 30 days to election. So section 84 now has now introduced an additional qualification that is not actually provided by the Constitution. Good enough, the Federal High Court in Omoigui has now interpreted that provision to be unconstitutional. It remains to be seen whether the Court of Appeal, because the matter has been appealed to the Court of Appeal, whether the Court of Appeal will now endorse that interpretation that has been given. So generally, there are novel and far-reaching innovations that have been introduced by the Electoral Act to ensure credibility in the electoral process, and they have bearing with security. When there is credibility in the system, people will be happy and that their votes have counted, and because if a government is legitimate, people will give their support. So overall, in my view, the new Electoral Act actually introduced innovations that are very novel, that are very fundamental, in ensuring credibility in our system.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to call on the, I believe this whole dispute about the electoral provision, hopefully we would not have conflicting judgments before the election, before the matter is resolved at the Supreme Court, because that's normally the pattern where different federal courts in Nigeria give different opinions. Well, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to call on Godwin Amobi to give his question. He's been waiting for all this time. Mr. Amobi, please, you have the floor.
Okay. So good evening, moderator, and all our speakers. We do appreciate you, and we also thank the organizers of this in memory of our dear Dr. Nowa. I wouldn't be asking much questions, but I just want to make some comments and observations based on my own immediate experiences as a geologist that has been working in the field for the past 22 years. If we take an issue of what happened to the train, where the train was attacked close to the Regina station. By the way, that train is my regular train, the last train of the day, because it's actually an express train. So I typically take it virtually every other week to Kaduna. Regina has been a black spot, whether on the Kaduna-Abuja highway or on the train tracks. And you will see that criminality always revolves around where they have some comfort. So you always wonder, when these black spots are known for so many years, what gives those criminals the confidence to always operate from those axes? And you wonder what our security, what they do. When even we in the field, we know when we are working. And once you're approaching Regina and Keteri, you know you have a problem. And it keeps reoccurring. If you go to Breningwari axis, Saulawa, Pandongeri, these are black spots. And we know, and these things keep reoccurring in those areas because something is making the criminals very comfortable with those areas. We need to find what is giving them that comfort. If you go to Niger, the same thing, Sarikin Power and the rest, you see, people know those spots, and even very close to where we stay in FCT. If you go to Kuje Area Council and you're working in areas like Rubochi, there are certain areas that they will tell you you shouldn't go to that area. There are camps all over those areas. So it's not just a matter of intelligence now, because I know our security, some of them have this information of camps scattered all over the place, and still nothing is being done about it. I believe that if we take the bull by the horn, I always use a typical example of when the Abuja airport was closed in 2017, and we had to be using the Kaduna airport for most of our trips. And people had to be moved from Abuja airport to Kaduna airport to Abuja, even late in the evening. For the 2 months, there was no single event on that expressway. No single event of kidnapping or criminality or hijacking of any bus taking people to the airport. Meaning that we can get these things right if we choose to. That's my concern. Another angle that I am looking at is the angle of that same confidence. Kaduna is a military, one of these, I should say, is the military headquarters of Nigeria. You have so many institutions in Kaduna. You have the Defense Academy, you have the First Mechanized, you have the police. And the criminals are roving and ravaging the entire Kaduna, kidnapping people here and there. Something must be giving them that confidence, and we need to identify it. The other area that we need to look at is the economics, the finance of criminality, because just the way security needs funding, that's the way criminals, they need funds. The way security operates with courage and confidence is exactly the same way criminals operate, with comfort, courage, and confidence. So if they are comfortable with what they are doing, they are having enough finances, how are we tracking those finances? One of the key things we have found out is that most of these spots we're having this crisis, the camps where they're training people. You also see that they are tied to some of our resources. As a geologist, we know. So when we hear they kidnap people or that we have camps around Kagara, we know Kagara is a major gold area. And when they take over those places, they take over the operation of some of the makeshift mine camps in those areas. In Zamfara, it's the same thing. They take over and they take over the mine camp. So they mine and they sell to people. People buy from them. You know, it's the same thing in Niger. If you go to Niger, the major gold districts in Niger are taken over by criminals, the Shiroro area and the rest of them. And we know all this. We have the mine police, we have the railway police, we have a lot of these subunits that have this information on their desk. What are we doing to puncture these areas that are making them so comfortable? Their finances, they are ravaging in the fields, their confidence. So if we look at these areas critically, that's just my honest contribution as a geophysicist that have worked for this nation for 22 years and still working. This is affecting most of our movements. At times you are even in the field and you see the camps, you see them moving around, you know, and they tell you security will be telling you don't go to this axis, walk here, don't walk there. I mean, that is not too good. Thank you so much, and I also appreciate the organizers once again.
Thank you, Mr. Godwin Amobi Alo. You raise a very important point that if these terrorists are mining minerals, gold, and other minerals, and the police know about all of this, then what is going on? Again, like the IG said, and what I've also repeated is that there's no political will. And if you have no political will, intelligence is essentially relegated to the garbage can. So IGRSA, please, can you address this particular issue before I call on my younger brother, Omoigui, to give us the 5-minute takeaway? IGRSA, are you available?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. There is not much to add, sir, than what Godwin has said and what you have mentioned, that something is broken that we need to fix. When there are no consequences for crime, then crime will persist. So there must be a way where we are able to, you know, it's like a conveyor belt. You have a security system that will arrest these people, investigate them, process them through the judiciary, then the judiciary will now remand them or whatever in the correctional center. And that chain, whenever that chain is broken, you'll see that some of the cases that the police made, like the Evans case, like the bank robbery in Ofa, it took them close to 4 or 5 years to prosecute, because the requisite skills of investigation, was missing. It took us 3 months to get the Olufala kidnappers, in jail. Everything we had to collaborate with the DPP's office. Give us a lawyer. Tell us what are the points to prove, that these people they actually committed the offense. They have confessed, but that confession, has to be situated in a situation where they will not come into court and now come and start saying, no, the confession was done under duress. Then we're not going to trial within trial. So there must be that complementarity, collaboration between all the security forces for us to get this thing right. We are really we're in a big problem, sir. So I just pray that we're able to get it right. The capacity of the law enforcement officers is jazzed up. They know what they're supposed to do. Build trusts with members of the public, get a credible, actionable intelligence. All these are the things that we need to do. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, IGRSA. I think it's evident from the way the whole country has been essentially going downhill into an abyss under the last several administrations, but this particular administration has been the worst of all. So hopefully we can get an administration that will have the political will and not these crooks and looters who recycle themselves from one position of immunity to another. So I want to thank everybody before I call on my brother to give a 5-minute thank away. And most especially, I'd like to thank my younger sister, Ifueko Karu, and her husband, Abi Asishana Okaru. They were the principal organizers of all of these events, and including coordinating the speakers. And Asishana Okaru is the Secretary General of the Nigerian Governors Forum. So he's closely involved. Unfortunately, his principal, Governor Fayemi, did not have enough time to stay around. Hopefully we can get him another day so we can quiz him on immunity and impunity of his fellow governors. So Egosa, please, you have the floor to give us a 5-minute takeaway.
Thanks a lot. I apologize for I've been quite ill this weekend, so it is I've tried to stay up as much as possible to sit through this, but I've got a massive head cold and sinus infection, so I apologize for my not being 100% today. So thanks a lot, Dr. Soda. Thanks to all the participants, all the attendees, incredibly grateful. As was pointed out on numerous occasions, we have come together to celebrate my brother, Dr. Nowa Omoigui, and I think most importantly, with the topic of this webinar, we are sort of really, delving into topics that he will have been most dialed into, the topics that he was always most concerned about, whether it had to do with the span of civil-military relations or national security, or domestic, security initiatives, campaigns, and the like. And of course, because my brother was always one of the very best at doing primary research, he got to be able to talk to a lot of the protagonists and antagonists that show up in the various stories of Nigeria's history, from the original dynamics to the internecine warfares and fights and disagreements, to essentially recasting and try to help reformulate policy. And I can only imagine, I'm hoping he's listening in onto this, because I think he will have really appreciated all of the various insights and inputs today. There are a couple of takeaways that I certainly have noted in this conversation that, we all, have to think about. One is that as much as we see these, we face some of these, very tragic events like the Kaduna train attack and bombing and kidnapping and the like. The first and most important, element of any, society is having a legal system that is consistently dependable, is consistently reliable. It doesn't just talk about justice; it delivers justice. And I always talk about the old concept of systems thinking as something that, for some random reason, Nigeria has never been able to benefit from, because what we find in when we don't have systems thinking is that we don't seem to understand that participants come and go, politicians come and go, parties come and go, governments come and go, but robust and dependable systems don't. And so as we talk about systems, one of the basic underpinnings of any working system is a justice, a mechanism for justice to be seen and done. And that's something I think that we continue to struggle with in Nigeria. The second thing is, which is tied to the first about the need for a justice system, is the requirement for consequences. And justice is just one vehicle for being able to sort of deliver consequences. There are moral situations, there are religious constructs and the like. And and the truth is, we've gotten to a point where the impunity, because of the confidence that derives from a recognition that there will be no consequences, really has caused a lot of sort of what I would call sort of a death spiral, for the country, and it's sort of many sort of elements and instances. And so there are no consequences, and so people can then get up and do exactly whatever they want to do. So that's another sort of key theme that I think we came away with from the conversation today. The third, I think, is that we all instinctively realize, what the job that we need to do, right? We need to do this together. We do not, we intellectually understand that we cannot let divisive elements such as religion or tribalism or what I would call economic compromises, drive us from improving the system. But we continue to say all the right things. We continue to hand wave very vigorously, but yet nothing changes. We're approaching an election next year. There's a lot of activity going on, and people are making traditional sort of pre-election promises and the like, and yet the economy is under assault. Domestic security is under assault. The ability to not feel fear is under assault. And one of the worst things I think that anybody in a reasonable society has to deal with is the ability to be able to go about one's business without being afraid, and the ability to go about one's business, with hope. And it reminds me a lot of this TV program I watched years ago, where there was a prisoner who was in jail for murder. He had killed his mother's boyfriend, and he had gotten into Stanford, and he had all of the what I would call the key elements that you would think would have put him on a trajectory of success. And he ended up in a penitentiary. And he was interviewed, and they asked him what was the biggest learning that he had to sort of be able to deal with being in prison for 25 to life. And he said very clearly, I needed to kill all semblance of hope for me to get through every day. And it was very tragic because you saw coming into that conversation that he will have been sort of on an upward trajectory, but it tells you a lot about what the loss of hope can do to a belief that things can get better. And so I think for all of us together, coming together today and talking about this, I think what I would say is, yes, there are fundamental systemic problems. Yes, some of these things, we might need to get to a point where we have to have some very difficult decisions made. Again, as Dr. Soto talks about, sort of having the willpower and the persistence and the conviction and to be able to drive through some of these difficult decisions. But I think most importantly, people just want to have hope that at some point in time, we can right the ship and we can course correct. And that was always what my brother was about, right? Despite all of the facts that sort of will have led people to lose all hope, he never stopped. He never stopped hoping. He never stopped believing in the country. And it was a very tragic loss to lose him so early. But he left his words for us. And over the next couple of years, as we begin to share more and more of those, hopefully there is an anchor point where people can come back and restate themselves and reaffirm themselves to reigniting the hope that we all need. So appreciation to my family, to the organizers, to the speakers, to the participants for supporting us on this day. We are incredibly grateful for the love and the care and really the devotion to my brother and his memory. And then hopefully we can continue these conversations and start to, drive some meaningful change across our country.
Thank you very much, Egosa. I didn't realize in time that you were feeling unwell, but I'm happy you were able to surmount your cold to speak as a lawyer will speak. Your perspective was very well appreciated by all of us here. And you know what? I believe that these are the kind of, first of all, the first annual memorial for my brother Nowa has really, it's a real testament to his legacy, his love of country, and his passion for all things civil, military, and security. And you know what? I believe that with all the input here on this in this seminar, it's something that really should be done on a regular basis, not just once a year, but on a regular basis, because our country is in trouble. And if we don't arrest this decline, we will not have a country to speak of. So, but I want to thank everybody, all the participants who have been here, all our speakers, and the organizers, my sister Fueko, the principal organizer, for a very enlightening forum. So hopefully we can do this more often and we can steer our country away from the path that is heading to a path of destruction if it's not arrested. Is that serious? So thank you, everybody. The first annual Nowa Omoigui Memorial webinar is hereby declared closed. And Nowa, your memory lives forever. We love you. God be with you. And you can see how people love you, all your friends, classmates from way back. Many of them have attended this. So we know you are looking from heaven and looking at all of us, and we will continue to honor and cherish your legacy. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
His soul and his soul for the faithful departed, rest in peace. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. God our Father, we thank you for these school activities this morning, the mass we offered for Nowa, and all our contributors here. I pray that as we end this conversation, we pray that God will send men and women that can bring about peace to our nation. I pray that God will bless each and every one of you, your homes, that God will bless you with peace both now and forevermore. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.